Okay, so sermon series on prayer for the next 4 weeks called The Power of Persistence, which is kind of what it takes to develop habits, is persistence, doing the same thing over and over. We'll cover 4 different areas of this throughout the series. So Luke 18, verses 1 to 8 is the section we're going to give our attention to, and here it is. Then Jesus told his disciples a parable to show them that they should always pray and not give up. He said, "In a certain town there was a judge who neither feared God nor cared what people thought. And there was a widow in that town who kept coming to him with the plea, 'Grant me justice against my adversary.' For some time he refused, but finally he said to himself, 'Even though I don't fear God or care what people think, yet because this widow keeps bothering me, I will see that she gets justice so that she won't eventually come and attack me.'" That translation's a little weird. It's just the idea. She's going to wear me out. She's going to tire me out by continuing to come. The Lord said, "Listen to what the unjust judge says. And will not God bring about justice for his chosen ones who cry out to him day and night? Will he keep putting them off? I tell you, he will see that they get justice, and quickly. However, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on the earth?" All right. Everybody who has lived in this area for a while, Redlands, Moreno Valley, Loma Linda, you guys have seen this sign, right? Everybody seen it? Yeah? Everybody's familiar? What does it mean? There may be some donkeys, some burros close by. I've been driving around here for 3 years, and I honestly, there's only been one time that I've seen them, and they were like way up on the hills. So this sign that's supposed to tell you, hey, there's a great chance that there's wild donkeys around. I'm just kind of wondering where they are and where are these donkeys? I don't ever see them. Are you sure that there are wild donkeys around? So do you know how you know that there are actually wild donkeys in the canyons? Kelly, you read my mind. Donkey scat. I mean, people wake up and find this stuff in their front yards. And it is evidence that there are indeed burros roaming the area. Yeah? That's the evidence. That's how you know that there are actually some donkeys around, even though you might not ever see them. Jesus said that there would be some evidence he would look for, right? His last question in his teaching was, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on the earth? And there would be evidence of faith that Jesus talked about in that teaching that he had. And what was it? What was one of the signs that there's still faith on the earth? I'll give you a hint. What do you got, Roland? Go ahead. Okay, his people would be crying out to him for justice. That's one of the signs that there's faith on earth, is basically what Jesus was saying, wasn't he? Am I wrong? I'm not making this up, am I? Okay, the sign that there'd be faith on earth was that people would be crying out for justice. Now that begs the question, what is justice? Because I think as Westerners, we normally think of justice, we think of the court system, we think of the legal system, and people, going and appearing before a judge. But here's a verse from Zechariah, chapter 7, where he talks about what the Lord says justice is. "This is what the Lord Almighty said, administer true justice, which is, show mercy and compassion to one another. Do not oppress the widow, the fatherless," that would be an orphan, "the foreigner, the immigrant, or the poor. do not plot evil against each other. So it sounds like justice is when people are concerned about individuals in the community. I mean, it was a different culture with widows and orphans and those sorts of things in the Israelite culture. But the idea is justice is when you're concerned about vulnerable people in your community who can easily be exploited. People who could easily be taken advantage of. Which means that injustice is to disadvantage someone else for your own advantage. All right, so I know that's a lot of definitions and stuff, but that means that prayers for justice, what Jesus is talking about, prayers for justice acknowledge that we live in a me-first world. Yeah? The very fact that the chosen ones of God are crying out for justice means there's a lot of injustice in the world, isn't there? A lot of me first. A lot of, I'm all right disadvantaging someone else as long as it's going to benefit me. When we become comfortable in a culture like that, what are we not going to pray for anymore? Justice. When we become comfortable in a culture that's me first, we're not going to cry out to God for justice anymore. And to not cry out to God for justice, at least according to what Jesus is saying in here, is at the very least it's a sign of a weak faith, right? And at the worst, it's a sign of unbelief. When there are no prayers, crying out to God, make all things right. True justice is when someone disadvantages themselves for the advantage of someone else. Like I was showing the kids, that's why the scale's tipped. That's actually what justice is in the biblical definition. When someone willingly disadvantages themselves for the good, the benefit of someone else. So Jesus did this with a woman. There's a very interesting account from Luke chapter 7, where there was a widow, which means that her husband she'd already buried her husband, and now her only son died as well. And just, I know this is really hard for us to understand, but this is way before life insurance policies. This is way before Social Security. This is way before GoFundMe pages for poor widows in your community who, they're not going to have any kind of support now. That's what's happening here for this woman. She's not only grieving the death of her family members, she's also incredibly vulnerable now as a woman who has no male representatives in her life. And it says that when Jesus and his procession were entering into this town, this woman in the funeral procession were leaving it. So they were passing each other. And when Jesus saw the woman, it says, he was filled with compassion for her. His heart went out to her, not just because death had done its worst to her family, but also because he knew what kind of situation she's going to be in now. And then he disadvantaged himself. When anybody came into contact with death under the Mosaic covenant, whatever you want to call it, when you came into contact with death, you were rendered unclean. Yeah, so these guys who are carrying the dead young man out, they're going to have to undergo rituals to become clean again. And Jesus walked right up to the casket. And do you remember what he did? First thing he did? He touched the casket. In other words, he disadvantaged himself. He became unclean. He took the uncleanness of what was happening, the whole situation, and absorbed it into himself. He disadvantaged himself, became unclean ritually. And then he said to the dead young man, Young man, I say to you, get up. And the young man came to life again. I mean, it's such a beautiful picture of Jesus' whole mission and everything Jesus is about. He was doing justice for the widow right here. He's literally doing justice by disadvantaging himself for her advantage. Yeah? And what a great picture of the way Jesus fully disadvantaged himself, as the Apostle Paul talks about in Philippians, that though he was equal with God, he didn't use that status to his advantage. But he disadvantaged himself and became obedient to death, even death on a cross, a place of utmost shame. And therefore, God exalted him and honored him and gave him eternal glory by raising him to life again, so that Jesus disadvantaged himself for your advantage and for mine, that we might know God as the one who's reconciled us to himself, who fills our life with new hope, new life, new peace, everything that we could possibly ever want, Jesus has already given to us. Everything. By disadvantaging himself and lifting us up as the sons and daughters of God the Father. So, prayers for justice then count on Jesus to restore all things. There's something about life on this earth that all of us are reminded of on a regular basis. And that is, as much as humans work for justice and for lifting up the oppressed, we might make some steps in the right direction, but then we take 4 or 5 steps back, don't we? As a world, as a society. And so there's something about Jesus and something that prayers to him, Lord, make everything right, acknowledge that he's the only one that can finally and fully do it. So they count on Jesus to restore all things. And there's a story, I don't even know if it's true, but I think it helps illustrate this, where this is back when they first came out with the Model T Ford. And a couple was out for a ride in their new luxurious vehicle, one of the newest pieces of technology out in their Model T Ford. And guess what happened? It broke down. It broke down while they were driving out in this car. And so they got out of it, started working on it, tinkering with this, tinkering with that, trying to get it running again. And they were so embarrassed because they just, this was the brand new, most exciting thing you could possibly have. And here they are, stranded on the side of the road. And then another Model T came pulling up. And the guy got out of the car. He said, "Is everything okay? Do you guys need help?" And they said, "Yes, please. We've been trying to get our car started again, and we can't do it." And the guy started, let me see what I can do. Started tinkering around on it, messed with a couple things, and sure enough, within 10 minutes, the Model T was running again. You know who it was? You know who it was that they met that day out on the road? It was Henry Ford. They're like, how did you do that? Like, I've been messing around with this for 3 hours. How did you get this figured out so fast? And he said, "Well, let me introduce myself. I'm Henry Ford. I helped design these cars." Isn't that what it means to count on Jesus to restore all things? That he's the one who designed everything? He's the one who's able. He's the one who's destroyed death and brought life and immortality to light through his resurrection. So don't give up, and pray to the one who will, who can, who has promised to restore all things once and for all. And he'll do it quickly, Jesus said, right? He'll do it quickly. But then again, remember, like with the Lord, a day is 1,000 years, 1,000 years later. So quickly is kind of, we'll see. But don't give up. Keep praying. right? Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. Amen.